Well, happy Saturday. It is Saturday, right? Saturday
Yes.
night, everybody. Look, I counted it. It's like we were at the draft facility for like 27 hours, 27, 28 hours. Not nearly as long as the Saints, but like we're probably very delirious. But welcome to Second and Saints, guys. Thanks for tuning in. John Hendrix alongside Ross Jackson. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And special shout out to you guys. We crossed the 500 subscriber threshold not that long ago, and it's only because of you guys. So we really do appreciate the support. It means the world to us. We're just two guys that just love bringing you guys, Saints fans, the coverage they deserve, and just kind of in a Ross and John fashion, if that even makes sense. But Ross, you said you're doing well. You're holding up. I'm holding up too. I haven't quite hit the wall, but we were able to get home a little bit and touch grass for a second and such. And so, how's
So
things
funny
going
you
for
would
you?
say that. I said that's exactly what I said when I left the facility. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go touch grass. That's so funny that you would say that. Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm still riding the wave, man. Like I haven't had any time to like sit down and chill out or anything like that. And so like I'm feeling great. I'm only gonna be tired when
Oh,
I get tired, but I'm not tired right now, so I can't be tired. So I'm feeling fantastic.
yeah, one day you'll be tired, so it'll be
One of these
good.
days. It's gonna be
Yeah,
tonight
I've
eventually.
between last night and the night before, I hadn't even toppled double digits for sleep hours. So that's kind
Hey,
of where I'm at. So it'll come.
hey,
It'll come. I'll crash
that's
soon.
it.
I can sleep when I'm dead, right? You know what I'm
That's
saying?
it.
So it should
Look
be
at
no
us,
time
man.
soon.
We get to be
Yeah,
here
right.
though. We get to do this though. That's all I
That's
care
right.
about. I
That's
ain't worried about
right.
no sleep.
So yeah, you ain't got no time for sleep. We're talking about sleep. Um, Anyways, digress. All right, so Saints, they entered the day having 5 picks to make. We thought they were going to trade. We thought that they weren't going to
Oh,
finish with 5 picks,
definitely.
but instead of 9 picks, they finished with 7 picks. They only had to trade to second round, but they stood pat, and were able to stay patient. And we can just kick it off with pick 150, getting Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina. Obviously we talked about the Penix stuff and all that good
Mhm.
stuff wasn't a possibility and such, but um taking Spencer Rattler there, a guy that was regarded, as a first rounder, has some experience at Oklahoma, all that fun stuff. Just your take, your thoughts, because I think a lot of fans are a lot more excited about this pick, maybe than they might have been about a Penix pick.
Yeah, for real. It's crazy. And I think some of it is like, the expectations that come with being the 150th pick or a little bit lighter and stuff like that. So you could just be excited about the potential development there. I wasn't the biggest Spencer Rattler guy in terms of evaluation and stuff like that. I think he hung some balls in the air, had to force some receivers to come back for the football. I always kind of, but everybody feels like he can make every single throw and everything. So I'm going to go back to the tape, go at it with fresh eyes and kind of see where it is. But I will say this, Spencer Rattler or whatever, like however you feel about Spencer Rattler, what I do like that the New Orleans Saints have shown us now 2 years in a row is that this new iteration of the New Orleans Saints, post Sean Payton, post Drew Brees, they're taking swings at quarterback. And I think you absolutely have to do that. Like if I had my druthers, you're taking a quarterback. I think Will Hildebrand said it when he was watching the show one time that like, if you're going to be out here drafting, take a quarterback every year, because if you hit, you hit, and it changes everything for your franchise. And if you hit on a quarterback that ends up being a day 3 pick, oh my goodness, like you have so many resources. Like talk about getting right with the salary cap and all that kind of stuff. So I think that like that's the biggest takeaway for me. Talking to Spencer Rattler, he's clearly matured since whatever that docu-series was that everybody wants to talk about. He's managed that adversity. That was something that Dennis Allen said that they really loved about him. And so I think that like, look, he checks the boxes in terms of size. He's not a sub 6 foot quarterback. Finally, you're looking at a guy that everybody feels can make every throw on the field and that has a little bit of mobility, despite that 4.9 40-yard dash that he ran. Which again, how many times are these guys going to be running in a straight line in that situation, right? Um,
Yeah.
and has sort of the thing that I've always respected about Spencer Rattler is how quickly he processes the field and everything. And so I think all those things come together gives you what he is, which is which are pieces that you can see development potentially coming from. And now you have an entirely new staff that's very different from the previous staff that never really developed a quarterback. Now you've got a really, really solid quarterback coach ready to develop. And I think that could go a long way for
Yeah, I'm glad you said solid quarterback coach because
him.
man, I'm excited about Andrew Janoko. him and pairing up with Clint Kubiak, I mean, it does bode well, I think, for some of these guys. And so, look, I think when you look at Rattler, and looking at some of the comparisons, I think Gardner Minshew was kind of one of the things that were thrown out there. And look, I think Rattler has some upside. I think the pick was a little bit surprising. Let's just start there
Sure. Yeah.
and say that it was a little bit surprising because there were some other needs. But look, I think this is a case where it was best player available. I mean, a guy that even everybody talked about was a first round pick at one point. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
so again, getting him, bringing somebody that you're not just saying, okay, we're just going to let Jake Hayner be the backup. We're going to see a competition. And I mean, if you think about it, if Hayner and Rattler do well, and then you put Kellen Mond or Nathan Peterman on the practice squad potentially, I mean, it's a good problem to have. And of course, look, there's no knock on Derek Carr here, but he has got hurt, and you needed a backup. So
Right.
you're giving attention to a spot which may need attention at some point in the season. And I hope Carr plays all 17 games plus playoffs and is able to play all the snaps too. But it's just the reality of the league that we're in. And so, look, I think the risk reward type thing, if it hits, amazing. I mean, there have been some great day 3 quarterbacks. We're not going to get into the total grades yet, but man,
Right.
a lot of people around NFL Network, ESPN, everybody loved the pick for New Orleans. Are we not seeing anything? Like, I guess for those who might not be completely sold, what might they be missing, or what might their hang up be? And I understand they know Michael Pratt, but what might be the hang up? Why might people be upset at this pick?
Yeah, I think the big thing that you have to look at is just sort of, effectively the fall off that he had, right? This was a guy that, came into this class, or when he was recruited, he was the number one, he was considered like the number one quarterback and all these other things. He had expectations of being the number one overall selection in the NFL draft, coming out of Oklahoma and all that. But then, he had situations where, Caleb Williams came in, and look, when Caleb Williams comes in, you're going to get benched, right? Like that's not on, it's not on Spencer Rattler. That's just simply what it is. But then you saw him show up in South Carolina, lost a couple of games, and then just went on to like kind of clean up after all that, and has done incredible and has done really well. So I think even despite all of those things, you could absolutely see him be a guy that, brings something in. He doesn't have the 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio you typically like for quarterbacks. He's got 77 touchdowns to 32 interceptions, but he only had 8 interceptions that he threw last year. Completed over 68% of his passes in his career, also ran for an additional 16 touchdowns. So maybe that gets you to that 3-to-1 threshold when you add in those rushing touchdowns and everything. But so I think that, you can nitpick here, as Dennis Allen says, you can punch holes in this
Yeah.
situation if you want to. But I mean, I think the thing that I do enjoy about him is, despite sort of the rocky road that he had between his end of Oklahoma and getting started in South Carolina, like he persevered through all of that. So, we can ding him for it, but we got to give him credit for coming out on the other side of it. But I do think that there is something about sort of that, the perception of, oh, this guy was supposed to be a first round pick in terms of, or first overall pick at some point was the conversation, and it gets drafted in the 5th round. I think it just changes what your expectations of him are at the next level. But I think getting a guy in the 5th round, the other way to look at that though, is getting a guy in the 5th round that has number 1 overall pick potential is what every NFL team is willing to bank on. And so that's what I think that the Saints look at there. And that's the way that I would credit Spencer Rattler as a player and as a man that navigated everything that he navigated. That's the way I would credit him. But I think keeping the expectations reasonable makes sense. Like, no matter how you slice it, he's a 5th round pick. Give him the opportunity to develop and see what he's able to turn into. But that should be as far as it goes at this time.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to see him in action, right? I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
big thing. And look, for those who don't know, again, on Second and Saints, don't forget to like and subscribe. Go to the channel because we got to talk to Dow Loggins, the South Carolina's offensive coordinator, and Shane Beamer, the South Carolina's head coach. And so I thought it was funny because you brought up Oklahoma, and he was talking about how Rattler was sitting behind Jalen Hurts and just the maturity and the process that he's gone through and stuff. And look, Rattler met it head on. He said that he wouldn't change a thing of what happened at college. And so I think he has the right demeanor. I think he has the right mindset. I think he has a lot of confidence going into it. I mean, in
Yep.
this guy, a lot of people praise that he might be the best pure passer in this draft and stuff. And I know he can be
Yeah.
mobile, and I know he can do a lot of different things. And so, look, we're not going to tell you that he's going to be the next coming of anything, because on paper everything looks great, but you got to learn this offense. You got to learn a whole lot of complexities and stuff. And Derek Carr is the quarterback, right? I mean, that's the
Right.
main thing. But it is nice to be excited about, you know, could they have a situation where it's like Aaron Rodgers sitting on the bench behind like a Brett Favre or something like that, or if it's somebody in waiting. And I mean, it remains to be seen, but I don't think there's anything to really be upset about here. And so I'm just glad they didn't use a first round pick, because the biggest things that we said coming into this thing was be patient on the night
Hmm.
one, maybe be a little bit aggressive on day two, and day three, just see how the chips fall. We would have liked them to trade into the fourth round or something. That never happened. But again, you look at the picks, you look at the value, you look at the upside, and some of these guys that they got. I mean, Rattler's a great fit for now, especially where he was drafted. And then they used the other pick in the fifth round, their second one, to get Pittsburgh wide receiver Bub Means. Amazing name for starters. They
I
get him
mean,
at
man,
170.
listen, so
And
many
not only
bangers in
that,
this rookie
yeah,
class. So
boy,
many
let me
bangers.
tell you, his interview, again, all the interviews for all the prospects are on Second and Saints. So if you want to go check out any of that, go check out some of that stuff. Not right now, because y'all are watching us, but at any rate, Bub Means, this dude's got a lot of charisma, but
Yeah.
a guy who can make some contested catches, 6'1". I can't remember weight offhand, is like 199
Like,
maybe. Don't
yeah, he's like
quote me on that.
198, something like that.
Yes, in that ballpark, but contested catches, and so what's your take on Bub Means, other than the fact that he's going to be really fun to watch in the locker room, and I think his
Yeah.
personality is just amazing.
Yeah, his personality is awesome. And actually he was a little bit bigger. He was a 212 guy. I thought
212.
for some reason he was in that 190 range. Must be thinking about one of the UDFAs. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you get 4.43 speed with him. He's a guy that's really physical. A lot of people talk about him with his contested catches and things like that. The other thing I think really helps him out and maybe separates him from some of the other, like we watched Brendan Rice fall way, 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 way
Whew,
down, much
man.
further than we thought. And I wonder if some of that has to do with, like, look, Brendan Rice isn't out there doing anything special teams wise and stuff like that. And a lot of the guys that you ended up seeing go were guys that can contribute from a couple of different spots. Bub
Yep.
Means is definitely one of those dudes. He was the, Pitt's leading receiver last year, kind of took over after Jordan Addison had to deal with some bad quarterback play in Pittsburgh last year as well. So kind of had to navigate all that, but still ended up producing, still ended up, with the opportunity to be able to do all that. And then he comes out and it contributes as their top gunner over on the punt side, helped out as a returner as well, all while putting up 721 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns and just 2 drops last year. And so I think that, like, he's a guy that brings a lot of energy, clearly, brings a fantastic personality to the locker room, and is willing to do whatever it takes, can play inside, outside. I think they see him a little bit more as somebody that can play on the outside and then can end up bringing in some of that special teams value. And I think that can go a long way for him to be able to potentially challenge there and then see what he's able to do. I don't know if he's going to be able to step in and be your ex receiver his rookie year or anything like that, but I also don't think that that's the expectation for him either.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to read this because Bob Rose, who writes with us at Saints News Network, he lives in Pittsburgh. He covers a ton of Pittsburgh football. He knows, and I'm just going to read what he had to say of it. Think of it. Let's just, before you get too triggered or anything, think of a shorter Traquan Smith, somebody who can make contested catches, a guy that can outrun a lot of people in a straight line, but the only way his cuts could be less precise is if he didn't have legs at all. He'll need to be schemed to get open, but because he's not going to get separation on his own, but he'll make a contested catch. And so, look, that's his assessment because he's watched a lot of Pitt football, but that's something where a Coach Williams would really come into play here.
Yeah.
I thought that's something that could end up being really decent, and again, you look at we'll get in undrafted free agents now, but adding to this wide receiver room is not going to be a bad thing. And, special teams, they lost Ike Adam, they lost Zach Bond, they lost Lonnie Johnson Jr. I mean, all these guys that they've lost, they got to replenish that somehow.
Right.
And the fact is that they've got to kind of, backfill and work with this new kickoff rule. So it's going to be exciting, especially some of these guys that they might have gotten undrafted. And again, we'll talk about it because we got the official list and stuff. But Yeah, it's a pretty good pick. I think, the way things ran on the receivers on day two, that was interesting. I had put out there coming into last night, they actually had Kool-Aid McKinstry as their number 2 guy on the board, is
Hmm.
what I was told, and Johnny Newton was first. They didn't have the receiver that we thought they were going to have. They didn't have him. It wasn't Keon Coleman. It was the other one. So, other one for Washington. That was their guy.
Oh, they
So,
like Jalen Polk.
yep, absolutely. So that's just
Gotcha.
a little bit of tidbit knowledge for everybody there. But saw that, heard about their board a little bit. But I think wide receiver was on the table. Defensive tackle was on the table. But last night they took the best available position, and so again, they're going to try it. And I think something else to remember, as Dennis Allen's talking about, free agency is going to be here. They're going to be active players. There are players. We've talked about it. There are plentiful amount of players, a plethora of players. I'm going to go back to Mark Ingram from last night and our stuff from last night, our rant and stuff. But man, it's something that Bubby comes in here. He can make of it what he wants to. And so I think that Allen's obviously, I don't want to say downplay, but he's obviously not crediting any of these day 3 guys with a spot. He's saying they
And I
could
like
be
that
contributors,
approach.
could be practice squad guys. This
Yeah.
got to earn a role on this team.
Yeah, I like that approach by DA, not coming in and over promising for these guys, understanding what the role is going to be here, being really, really clear about all of it. I think that that's something that's really, really important in terms of setting these guys up for success. Because if they walk in here and you're like, oh, yeah, these are the guys that we believe are going to help us, win a Super Bowl, blah, 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 and start putting a bunch of expectations on them, that just puts a lot of pressure on them when they're like, yo, I'm just trying to learn the NFL game real quick, everything like that. And so I do like that approach when you have a 14th overall selection and a 41st overall selection, you can put that pressure on them. But when you got 150 to 239, they're 150 to 239. Like let them be developmental pieces that are going to come in. And I just think I appreciate that actually Dennis Allen came out and kind of established like, here's what the expectation is and here's what the precedent is for these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. One of these questions just wanted David asked, missed a start, but you could see Marshawn move to a safety position, keeping it in black and gold. I mean, the short answer is no, but why would somebody like Marshawn not get moved to a safety spot? I guess that's the question you might ask is like, yeah, it's no, but why wouldn't you just move a Marshawn to the safety spot?
Money. Money. That's easy, right? Okay. So a couple different things. First of all, like when you have a lockdown corner, you let your lockdown corner be the lockdown corner. I don't think that he has to move to safety to be in the black and gold either. I don't know that that's contingent upon that. I think he can still
Yeah.
play corner and still be here in New Orleans. It's that doesn't seem to be the question. The question is, where's the buy-in and where's all that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Like where is that on the spectrum of buy-in or whatever? And so like you can move to safety and still not be bought in. That's not the issue where he plays. And so I think that oftentimes we try to jump to, oh, well, this player is at this age. Like we do this with Cam. Like people do this with Cam all the time. Oh, they should move Cam inside. He's older.
Yeah.
Trevor Penning didn't work out at tackle. You should move him on the inside. And now like this is another one of those kind of like common questions. Like, oh, can you move him to safety and stuff like that? Which is a valid question. Like that, but I don't think you're going to do that with Marshawn, man. Like, first of all, Marshawn's not going to want to do that. So one of the big reasons that he's going to tell you no. And then the other thing is that if you do that, you're way overpaying for a safety and everything like that. And so like, I think like those are a couple of the things. And then you don't want to waste that talent either, because there's no guarantee that he would pan out at safety either, right? You're trying to ask him to play a new position and all these other things after years and years and years and years. And look, like Marshawn plays incredibly well because of how naturally skilled he is. But like as a safety, you got to be all about technique. You got to be all about fundamentals and all those other things. Marshawn's very, very much, made by his natural ability, his skill set, his God-given talent and everything like that. And so keep that at corner, I would say.
Yeah, and in fact is when Marshawn plays corner, when he's on his game, he takes away half the field by himself. I mean, he is just ridiculous. And again, I think if they can move past it, which again, they're trying, they're doing it. And again, if you didn't hear what Dennis Allen said last night, go back and watch his interview, because that was the most concrete information we've ever got on Marshawn this offseason. Because at first it's been kind of like room to interpretation and stuff. And look, a shout out to Nick over at New Orleans Football, asking the follow-up questions and like, hey, people are going to interpret this answer about this, and what does that actually mean? And so I think that was a definitely good move for them to kind of clear that up a little bit. And he's getting workouts from Matt Rhea, which is a good thing. And so you had Rattler, you had Bub Means, and then you go to 175 just 5 picks later, and you get Jalen Ford from Texas. Yeah. Man, besides him being a huge fan of Carter 2 and Carter 3, which Carter 2 wins there. I'll just say that.
Every time.
All the time. But man, this guy
he had said too, he said Carter 3 and Carter 2. And I was like, okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. But man, what a good find. A guy who can play inside, guy that led Texas 2 years in a row in tackles. You had 10 and a half tackles for loss, triple digits in tackles last season. He can do some coverage. He's great against the run, but a guy that you look at taking, again, ball of energy, really. I like the class. I like when we talk to these guys, it's not like, I don't say this lightly, but it's not like we're talking to a piece of cardboard. Like some of these guys might be, a little concerned, but every single guy that they got, like you could see why the Saints, if they talk to him once, why. Like you got everything you needed to know from a guy from those types of things. But your thoughts on Jalen Ford and kind of what they are getting with him, and obviously where do you think he fits in?
Yeah, I think immediately he fits in as a special teamer, right? His ability to be able to contribute there. Played over 500 special team snaps in his career over in Texas, coming out of a blue chip program like Texas. I think there's a lot to be able to take away from when it comes to all that. And then this piece, the heir to DeMario Davis piece. I don't think we can crown him and say, or nearly crown him and say, hey, he is the heir to DeMario Davis. But here's what I'll say, right? It's like we were talking about taking swings at quarterback. Sometimes you got to take swings to be ready to replace your best player too. And while Jalen Ford might not end up being that person, we'll see. I think you got to be ready for that. And so I like the idea of being able to invest in there. I know that the Saints have gone out there and they brought in Willie Gay, they brought in Khaleke Hudson. Those are 1-year deals. You're not guaranteed to have those players in 2025. You're guaranteed to have Jalen Ford here in 2025 for at least the next 3 seasons. And so, if you want to keep him. And so I think that like him and his experience as a middle linebacker, him and his experience and his instincts, I think are big. Like he's really good recognition player, really smart player, reacts very quickly, really good communicator as well. Like I think there's just a lot to like about what's the bedrock for his development. Like what are the things that you can look at and say, okay, this is the starting place. What are the easily translatable developmental pieces, traits, all that? You can see all that when it comes to Jalen Ford.
Yep. I think it sticks out. And look, I think with Texas, they're a program that's on the rebound for sure. I mean, and they had a pretty solid class this year. And so I think some of those guys went really high, and it speaks highly to their program. Let me see if I can find this quote, because actually Steve Sarkisian gave us a quote on him.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was really good too. I mean, look, I'll just say this, not to read too much into everything, but man, the Saints did a really good job of getting us people to talk to, like even that getting Baldy last night, getting other former coaches and stuff. Like, man, we got so much insight from Brian Baldinger on everything. And I mean, he was just a wealth of knowledge. But you said you got the quote. If you got it pulled up, go ahead and read it.
Yeah, I got you. It's a little lengthy, so I'll read.
Well, you can read the second part. I think the second part is really what I was going for. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I got you. I'll say real quick too that he also recognized DeMario Davis as like one of the top linebackers in the league. Super excited to learn.
Lavonte David guy too.
Yeah. He compares his game to Lavonte David. He talked to Justin Mello over at the Draft Network and talked about that. He was like, yeah, Lavonte David's the guy that I think I model after. And then he mentioned Fred Warner too as a guy that's kind of like his size, modern day linebacker. Makes sense as well. All right, here's a little bit about what Sarkisian said about him. The thing that makes Jalen a great NFL prospect is his versatility. He's got size, speed, and really high football IQ. We asked him to do it all: rush the passer, stop the run, and cover people in space. He's a guy that can play the run and cover the pass. He can play either inside linebacker spots. I think his versatility in the NFL is going to be key because He will be able to get to do multiple things for you. The Saints are going to love this guy as a player in the locker room and in the community. Jalen's just an incredible player and person.
I mean, there it is. I mean, I
It's
think,
fire.
and of course, you think, well, a coach naturally would say something good about his players and stuff, but I think there's a genuineness to Sarkisian being able to say that against about Ford and stuff. And you saw that the tape. I mean, you put the tape on, the guy's really, stands out in those ways. And this wasn't a particularly strong linebacker class. I mean, look at what happened to Peyton Wilson, those injury concerns. I mean, this guy
Right.
just fell and fell and fell, and that really hurt him too. But you look at the day 3 history on some of these guys, like there you got DeMarco Jackson a couple of years ago. You look at the other situation like Nephi Sewell, he's not going to be ready for training camp at the moment because of the ACL injury. And so, I mean, you've got Khaleke Hudson that's going to be a good role player, probably play special teams. Willie Gay Jr.'s might put this team into more 4-3 situations. I feel like I think that's going to be one of the fascinating things to keep an eye out on. But man, a guy like Jalen Ford, I feel really good about it right now. And somebody asked about what I would grade the draft. I'm like, I kind of want to sleep on it because the euphoria of everything. I'm like, man, I saw the Pro Football Focus grades and they were A-, I think is what they gave the Saints. And I'm like, yeah, I want to give them a great grade, but I want to
PFF
kind of
gave him an
like
A+.
think about it. A+, it was A+. I'm sorry.
Yeah, give him
A+.
a whole perfect
Let me not
grade.
sell them short. Let me not sell them short. So, yeah, it was a good one. So I can't wait to see what happened. Brian says he went to school with his dad and uncle. Okay,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, he did say that his people, he had people in like the Shreveport area and stuff like that. I think he's from Georgia, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did say Shreveport.
No, sorry, his Bub Means is from Georgia, but
Bub
yeah,
Means.
he said, yeah.
Yeah.
But he said that he had people in Louisiana and everything like that. Ford did. The other thing that I'll point to too, like we were talking about development of Spencer Rattler because of the quarterback coach. How about development of Jalen Ford because of Michael Hodges, the linebacker coach, who has developed so much talent? Like Nephi Sewell was a guy that was an undrafted free agent coming out of Utah, developed into a guy that was like earning starts at the end of last season. That made Zach Bond available to be a pass rusher. We saw the development of Zach Bond as a pass rusher, which especially from the second level was earlier on before they actually started putting him down in the defensive line. We saw Zach Bond. And not Zach Bond, Caden Ellis in the way that he's been developed, like Pete Werner in the way that he's been developed. Like Michael Hodges, I mean, he's getting those defensive coordinator interviews and everything like that every season now. And that's a big part of the reason why is because of his ability to be able to develop talent.
Yeah. And again, you brought him up. We've talked about this too on our show is I'm not so sure that he's going to keep sticking around too. This might be his last year because the guy's excellent at what he does. And so he's had interest elsewhere, I think for 2 years now. And so I was really surprised that Sean Payton didn't steal him away just because of how good he is. But, you got to get what you can out of him right now. And so, again, I remember the days where linebacker wasn't so good for the Saints, and then they brought in Mike Nolan and it got better. I mean, you had guys like Manti Te'o playing and AJ Klein and stuff like that, and so it got better. And then once you got Hodges into the equation, it just took it to another level. So I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, I wonder how much Hodges' future is tied to DeMario. To like, what if like will those two things coincide? Because that's a big hit to that linebacker, man. Like if DeMario retires and Michael Hodges leaves at the same time, like, whew.
Yeah, it'd be devastating. And DeMario, like, it was funny because Dennis was talking. He's like, "Well, DeMario thinks he can play till 50." I'm like, I don't know. The way DeMario takes care of his body, I mean,
maybe.
Not out of the question. He could play past 40 if he wanted to.
Right.
Yes. What UDFA is amazing. We're going to get into UDFA talk. So, but I just want to say we saw your question. We're going to talk about that and such. So, so let's go move on to the other pick as they went into round 6, 199, 24 picks later. A guy we almost toyed with the idea of taking our mocks, and I was thinking I might have taken him in my last mock, but I didn't. Because I took Levi Drake Rodriguez that ended up getting drafted too. But Christian Boyd, defensive lineman out of Northern Iowa, which people forget that's the school that Trevor Penning came from. But at any rate, everybody loved the pick. I like the pick too a lot. But talk about Boyd and kind of the upside that he brings. Another guy, really good interview. It seems like he's a good kid with the head on his shoulders and is ready to come in here to work.
Yeah, and yeah, 1-0 technique type. So he's your guy that can shoot the A gap, which is the gap that's located between the center and the guard, or he can line up directly over the center in a nose tackle type of situation. 6'2", 320 plus. I think he came in at 329, 325, one of those two. Um, he's a guy that's just like a big old run stopper, man. And he's got like he's quicker than you think he is for his size, kind of like Brian Brzee is. Um, and I think that like the other thing about him is that he's got a little bit of that untapped, disruptive pass rusher potential. But look, the Saints were 22nd last year in rushing yards allowed over the defensive side, a year that they expected to take a step forward. When it came to their run defense, they lost Malcolm Brown this offseason, who did go to Denver, unlike
Malcolm
Michael
Roach, you
Hodges.
mean?
Malcolm Roach, yeah, not Malcolm
You're
Brown.
going
Malcolm
you're
Brown.
going old school.
Malcolm Brown's the guy that they've been
It's been a
trying to
minute.
replace ever since they traded
Yeah.
him to Jacksonville too. Actually, now that I think about it, like they never really did that. They never really replaced him in what he did. And so I think that Christian Boyd's a guy that can come in and partner up pretty well with guys that can be more athletic pass rushers and everything, like Brian Brzee, like Colin Saunders, like Nathan Shepard, and then just be disruptive in the run game. He's violent. Like he's like a bull and pull kind of guy to where he'll like,
Mhm.
he'll bull rush, get a hold of you and then like throw you down and then try to run over you or run through you and everything like that. And so I like his play style. I like the violence that he brings on the interior. I'm sure Dennis Allen does too.
Yeah.
And I think that he could be a really exciting guy. He was one of my favorite defensive tackles in this year's class for sure. I tried to fold him in the mocks every chance I got.
There you go. 60 quarterback pressures at Northern Iowa during his time. I
Yeah,
mean, this
man.
is a guy that, man, you talk about a big man, and it's what I liked about Malcolm Roach is because he wasn't just a guy that could be good or that was good against stopping the run. He was a guy that could pressure the quarterback, and I think that's something an element the Saints really need to get a little bit better at. And so, look, it's not going to be handed to him, but as of right now, like between him and Jack Heflin, I like Heflin too. But I really like the concept of Boyd being that number 4 in a rotation. That's why I like the concept of a Tavondre Sweat, somebody who's a little bit bigger and it could come in and be able to kind of plug in some holes. Like I joked, I said, man, if you get Tavondre and Colin Saunders in the middle, not many people are going to be able to run the football, right? And so
Right.
you're going to have to go to the outside and stuff. But I think it was a good pick for the Saints, and to get him where they did.
Yeah, man. At
I mean, this is
199,
where.
like goodness.
Yeah, and I think all the time that we saw is that something interesting. And I get your take on this too, because I do want to get to a question here in a second. But one of the things that people were talking about in this draft is that people were saying that, or analysts were saying, the drop off was so great after round 4 because of the NIL stuff and all these other
Mhm.
different things. What do you make of that? Because I thought that was interesting, and I don't know that I really thought about that too much, but was that really a big deal?
For me, I thought that the drop off was during round 4. Like the way that I always explained it
Yeah.
was that there was kind of like a reverse bell curve to where like solid for 1, 2, 3. Then once you got outside of the top 100, there was kind of a dip in terms of value at what you would usually find at that spot. Like now you're getting into developmental players already by the time that you got into round 4. And then so the value kind of dips there. And then it kind of gets back up as you get into the 171, kind of where the Saints were, 150, 170 range, which might explain why they stayed where they stayed, right? Especially with the quarterback staying on the board that entire time. Because Dennis Allen said that Spencer Rattler's name was staring them in the face the whole night, everything. So, or the whole day. So who knew when they really started to get interested in him? And
Yeah.
so, so I think that that's the way that I always was, that it was kind of this, like, it's almost like there was a valley in that 4th round, where the value wasn't necessarily there. But then we saw a lot of talent drop out of the first and second day that we thought was going to go in this first and second day. And so I think that impacted that and kind of changed it a little bit when we got into it. But in terms of like what the expectation was going in, yeah, the expectation was that the 4th round, getting outside of the top 100 until you got back into about 150, 180, like somewhere around there, that value would dip.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about something. When I look at Boyd, one of the things that I can't help but think about is the way I would portray him. is almost like Tyler Davison, but more
Mm-hmm.
athletic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Both are 6'2". Now he's got about, I think, 20 pounds on Tyler Davison from where he was playing. But I think that's kind of where I envisioned him. And Davison was a guy that came in and was able to carve out a role for this team. But I just like the
Yeah.
athleticism that Boyd's going to bring to the table. But if you want to comp for maybe a Saints player that he's like, because we talked about Bub Means is a shorter Traquan Smith potentially with more upside. And I think that's kind of a fair comparison for Boyd is a Tyler Davison with a little bit more
Yeah.
upside. And so I think he's got the tools, the skills. And I thought it was funny about him and Trevor and stuff. And so again, they get to reunite and two Northern Iowa players now on the same roster. Who would have thought it? Oh man.
Yeah.
Ross, I want to get this question before we dive into our last prospect and
Oh,
get
great
into
question.
UDFA's. Kenneth asks, "What do you feel? What do you guys feel is missing for the Saints going into the? I was going to say going into the season. They filled out a lot of roster spots.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give your 2 pennies and I'll give my 2 pennies, which probably don't count for a hill of beans at this point to anybody. But what do you think?
Your pennies would buy a whole hill of beans, man. Don't worry about it.
Penny for your thoughts.
Penny for your beans. Penny for your bub beans. I look at starting safety is still a spot where you want to generate more competition. Now, I know that the Saints also address some of these spots in undrafted free agency, but I think there's a chance to go to veteran free agency in these moments as well. So I think like safety, X receiver is still a spot that I think you want to generate conversation or generate competition in. And then I would probably say like edge rusher. Edge rusher still feels like the spot where you might be able to go out there and find some talent. I think Emmanuel Ogba's still out there, like players like that. Like I feel like there's still an opportunity to get more help on the edge. I know that they signed Chase Young. I get that, but yeah, he had the neck procedure. I don't really know how effective he's going to be. He's on this incentive heavy deal based on won't he play games and all of this stuff. Like go out there and get you another pass rusher just to be safe. Like I could absolutely see that. So I'd probably put those three on my list. Still X receiver, still safety, and maybe yards after catch receiver. And then edge rusher. And just to be clear too, like those needs can be addressed by people that are already in the building, people that are new to the building that are already about to, have already agreed to terms or have been drafted or are currently exist outside the building for the team to go and get. So there's like several ways to address all that.
Yeah, I think for me, if we start on offense, I still think about the tight end spot. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
hear. I just want a little bit of more solid to solidify that spot. And again, I think that's telling because we said it's going to tell us a lot about Juwan Johnson, how they approach this draft with the tight end spot. Now they got a
Yeah.
nice UDFA there that I'm really excited about. I think fans
Yeah.
should be. But be fair, I was really excited about Joel Wilson last year from Central Michigan. I thought he was going to fit like a glove, and he didn't make
Okay.
it like at
I
all.
was I was once excited about Dion Yelder out of Western Kentucky. That was my guy.
Yeah, I liked him too, but
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't happen. But I think that's one spot for me. I think the other part is still the offensive line, specifically the interior. Like, what are they
Good
going to do
point.
at that left guard spot? I think
Definitely.
that's concerning, just because, again, again. It's for Trevor. The reports are positive. He's worked his tail off. He's in doing everything he can. Actually, one of the things that Boyd was talking about is he worked out with Trevor Penning this
Yeah.
offseason too and stuff. So I mean, they're good buds and stuff. But I think that left side is concerning for me because I think when you look at Fuaga, he should probably start right next to Ruiz when it's all said and done. But that left side, it's got to be cleaned up because you're talking about pass
Yeah.
protection on Derek Carr and you're talking about running off that left side and such, or handling a lot of different pressures. And so that's my concern defensively. It's the Marshawn thing for me. Is he bought in? Is he ready to go? Because if they get Marshawn and he's ready to go, then I feel great about that corner spot. And I still feel good about it, even if it was a Debo. And I would say Alante maybe moves outside for sure. And they could put somebody else in the slot. But I think that, and they kind of solved the need on the interior defensive line. I feel good overall. I think just the big thing for me is it's got to come together.
Yeah.
It's got to gel. It's got to mix. They can't come out slow in the gate. They can't wait 10 weeks to say, let's go have an extra day of practice for red zone. They can't just olay it and just kind of hope that things happen. I think this was a
Yeah.
wake up call for them last year of things just not going the way they want. And again, the locker room was still together and all these different things. But I just say that they just gotta to go out and execute.
Yeah.
They just can't list lazily to the left. I like quoting Family Guy, but
I
list
love that.
lazily to the left and hope things work out, and that the hope is not a strategy. So I think there's a couple of things that are missing, but it's not that much.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they're all addressable. I think that there's still places to go. Like even interior offensive line, like Dalton Reisner, Andrus Pete, like you've got ways to go there. Edge rusher Emmanuel Ogba, there's places to go there. You might even be able to add another running back if you wanted to. Like there's a lot of different ways that they can still go. Like they're not done. And they've done some really, really good work recently in post-draft veteran free agency. And I think
Mhm.
that they'll be able to continue to do that again. I mean, it certainly seemed like Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis have been very confident about it over the course of the past couple of weeks. And it's not like those conversations probably haven't already started. You know what I mean? Like before the draft, some of those conversations may have already started to lay some groundwork. So we'll see
Yeah.
exactly which way it goes. But I do think that like the positions that they have that are those DA said that they moved on from must needs and they're still at, but they still have needs. And,
Yeah.
but I do think that they're addressable and there's space to address them. Um, and to an extent, there's a trade market too. I mean, if you have the opportunity to be able to leverage, you didn't leverage any future selections in this year's draft, which I think was smart.
Oh,
But if
that
you
was
can
so good.
leverage, yeah, but if you can
How
leverage,
nice was that? You didn't dip
yeah,
in the cookie jar next year.
that was great. And so if you get now, you have the opportunity to where if you get to, training camp or just before training camp, and some of these other players are now available because of the draft and all these other things, then maybe you move next year's fourth or fifth or whatever they have in day three to bring some veteran player that's on a cheap enough deal for you to get under the salary cap, and then maybe restructure, extend, or whatever. Like there's a lot of ways now to be able to kind of help yourself there.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'll see, because I think those are going to happen very quickly. Again, you're
Hmm.
looking as you get into May and June, right before training camp, you'll see some things happen. I mean, it'll heat up. It'll be quiet for a little bit. They'll have a rookie mini camp here in a few days, or not a few days, like a few weeks, and then they're going to have um, the mini camp, OTAs mini camp, and all that fun stuff.
Hmm.
And so I think right before they get to training camp, you might see some extra guys added and stuff. Another question I want to tackle, Ross. It has really not much to do with anything, but it is kind of like a personal thing to me in a way.
Hmm.
SJG8 asks, "What do I
Oh
have to
yeah,
do to talk about players like you guys? Love this. I'm always searching players and totally into researching players. I don't know as much as you guys, but I want to learn." Okay,
love
so
that.
for starters, I'll tell you this. My DMs are always open on Twitter, is
Same.
what I'd say. And the reason why I think Ross and I can, without getting too much and playing the violin, like I came from an era when I started, like 10 plus years ago. It was right after the Saints lost to the 49ers in the playoff game. That's when I started writing. I just went out for it because I was a guy that just said, "Oh, you know what?" Or I was at a bar and guys were like, "Yeah, man, you got a lot of cool things to say. You ever thought about writing on it?" I was like, "No, I mean, I didn't go to
Right.
college for that. I didn't think about it." And just kind of put my opinions out there and just started kind of growing from there. But I say that all that to say we've taken some very non-traditional routes, right? Because we didn't go to school for all this stuff and everything, but we've worked our way up, we've learned. And so what I would tell you is, first of all, put yourself out there and lean on people. Like when I was coming up, I leaned on guys like Nick. I leaned on guys like Mike Triplett. I leaned on a whole bunch of people and that would give me the time of day. And I think that meant the world to me. And that's why I'm so
Hmm.
passionate about saying, look, if you guys aspire to do something like this, and it may not be like a career thing or something like what we do, but if you're passionate about it, Ross, I think we might be able to speak for this, but I don't ever looked at this as a job. I just love what I do. And I just know that I came from nothing. And I would tell you that there are days where, I felt like hanging it up and just walking away. It is a very unpredictable type of role that we do and stuff. And so it's rewarding, but it has its challenges. But, the big thing is don't be afraid to put yourself out there and,
Yep.
just try. And again, if you want some advice, if you want to talk, the biggest thing I tell people is just go for it. Try it. Get on some of the sites. Like I started with like Fansided. I started with those guys
Mhm.
at Who Dat Dish. That was there where I got kind of my start, and then I went to SB Nation. I mean, that's where it was, and it just opened up other doors. So I'll get off my soapbox and give Ross a chance to turn because he's actually got stuff to say too.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. Like we're, you know how much respect I always had for your journey, and I always looked at your journey as a mold and model for mine, right? Like I started writing for, a blog that like some friends started and stuff like that. Then I moved from there, did the same thing with the SB Nation, with the USA Today, and then I eventually ended up where we're now together at SI and everything like that. Started podcasting and everything, and that's a big thing. Like what John just said about like put yourself out there. When we say put yourself out there, we mean create content, like that's what this is right now. Like you have the ability, whether it's vertical video 1 minute at a time, whether it's long form and everything like that. You don't need a microphone like these. You don't need a soundboard like I've got behind me if you're watching on video and stuff like that. Like all you need is a damn microphone. Like go, what I mean? Like don't worry about like, do I have this, do I have that? Because I think I started with a $14 microphone that sounded like I was talking inside of a tin can with a rope. You know what I mean? It felt like it sounded. I would listen back every now and then. I'll listen back to like my very first podcast that I ever did, and it really felt like I just like put a tin can in front of a phone, ran a string, and then talked to the other tin can. Like that's what it sounded like. But like if you know what you're talking about, if you can come at it with an authority and with confidence, then go for it, put it out there, right? Go for it and put it out there, make it available, tweet it, share it, post it, like all that kind of stuff. Come to people that you trust. The two big pieces of advice that I'll give right off, or really three. The first one is like, be careful. Don't burn a bridge before you can build it. So just watch out for stuff like that. You don't need to
Great
be
advice.
incendiary. Yeah, don't burn a bridge before you can build it. Like go build a bridge. Second thing is that when you see somebody you want to learn from, tell them that. Tell them you
Yeah.
want to learn from them. Give them the opportunity to say yes to you. Don't just expect them to say no to you. And then the last thing is, and this was the best advice that I ever got. This came to me when I was working in theater, when I was still in undergrad, before I went on and did everything that I did in theater, which was a whole career that I did before I made the leap, excuse me, to somehow talking for a living, even though I clearly can't do it. It was don't wait for a safety net, just leap. Just leap. Safety net will show up if you need it. Don't wait for it. Just leap and everything like that. So those are the three things that I would tell you, man. Like I live by those things all the time and all. And that's the only reason why I'm sitting here. I tweeted out today and I was like, I love covering the draft. I say this all the time. I love covering the draft because I love watching people's dreams come true. But at the same time, watching people's dreams come true in this forum, in this arena, doing this, like it's a dream come true for me too. Everything like that. And so just go. Just go.
Yeah. For sure. And I mean, I would also say is not everybody's going to be approachable, but don't let that discourage you. I mean, again, I have a soft spot for people that like don't have a big following. It's like, I don't mind going on I'm not above going on a podcast that might not be like a big name podcast because I
Very
remember where
same.
I came from. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? And so that's a big thing. And the other thing I would tell you, just to add on to things not to do, don't plagiarize. That will be career suicide, and you will be done
Great
before you
call.
even start. Don't.
And yes,
And so
and yes, everyone knows. Like,
yes, they do.
don't think they don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody knows
Yeah.
if you're plagiarizing.
Even the people that go on Facebook and just lift stuff and just copy and paste it, y'all are the worst. And we know, everybody sees you don't know, you're just stealing. We got you.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, off the soapbox, but great question. I really do
Yeah.
like
Thank
the,
you for
the
that.
question. That's
Same.
a good one. And just a thing about how we are, man. This is totally kind of informal. I mean, maybe we could pass as professional at some point, but we're so chill and laid back when it comes to this that, we want everybody to know there's no secret, for we're trying to
Right.
hide. You should know what we know, I think, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. There's no big thing.
We
And
ain't gatekeeping over here.
yeah, exactly. And look, I say this, but we need more minorities. We need more women in the landscape. We need more representation of people that look like me and Ross. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's
Yeah, man.
always, no matter what. So,
Yeah.
man,
You need backgrounds, right? Like you're writing about people from a bunch of different backgrounds, and the more people that are around that are from those same backgrounds, the better you're going to be able to tell a story. The better the story is
absolutely.
going to be told, the better your ability to be able to tell a story, the better you're going to be able to expand that story to a fan base and to a listenership or to an audience that reflects that background as well. Like there's no shame in that at all. Like, and that door's got to be open to everybody. As long as you got the skill, as long as you have it, bring it.
For sure. All right. Well, that was great. I love talking about that, but we'll go back into Saints talk and touch on their last pick. Josiah Ezerim from Eastern Kentucky, a guy that played D tackle, was converted to an offensive lineman, but getting him at 239. You got a chance to really talk to him a good bit. I was really under the gun, so I got to hear just a little bit, but share a little bit about what you heard from him. And again, a guy that was the best part. I love seeing the draft reactions and stuff. So that was really cool seeing his.
Man, you could tell he was still, I mean, he was cloud nine. Like he was just so happy, so excited. I absolutely loved it. He brought so much good energy, good vibes behind it and everything like that. So this is a guy coming out of a small school. It's another developmental project type dude. And was coming in as somebody that, as John said, started off on the defensive side of the ball. And they basically told him when he got to Eastern Kentucky, they were like, look, the best chance for you to get out on the field is going to be over on the offensive tackle side. And the thing that I respect about him so much is that he said, I wanted to see the field. So I went over to the offensive side. And so he started off with a little bit of right guard and then ended up starting for 2 years at right tackle after that. And then went to the East West Shrine Bowl and met with Jari Evans, who is Saints defensive assistant working with the team, offensive assistant working with the team, helping on the offensive line, former New Orleans Saints offensive lineman himself. And, worked a little bit over at left tackle and all these other pieces. And that led to them having the opportunity to be able to draft him, I think. Like, I really think that was one of the things that really set that over and all. And so, so I was all about this selection. Look, he's right tackle, left tackle, right guard. So he has the versatility. He can move inside. Dennis Allen did tell me that he sees him as a tackle to start, and that's where they plan to start him out. But, when you're one of these guys, like one of these defensive backs, one of these wide receivers, one of these linebackers, one of these, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you're going to get moved around if you're a day 3 pick, and they're going to try to find the best spot for you, right? They're not just going to say, okay, this is what you do. They're going to give you the opportunity to show them and everything. And man, I just can't wait to see this dude in the locker room, man. Like he's going to be such a blast. He's going to have, and you could tell he's just a sponge. Like he's just ready to soak everything up, and he's ready to leap. Like he's ready to take risks. And I thought that was something that very clearly the New Orleans Saints are going to love about him, and probably already loved about him in the first place.
And look, we touched on this last night, but look at what you just said. This is a theme. They're getting the guys in the locker room that they want and that want to be here. It's just been a theme. And again, we talked about the holdover from the Peyton era and stuff like that. But I mean, look at last year's class. I'd say the same about them, the way they were picked and the guys that wanted to be here and all that stuff. They got free agents, same boat, and same thing with this class. I saw it earlier in the question, but I think somebody was asking, is DA getting more confident as a head coach? I think he's getting his mold and his stamp on his team is kind of where I feel like. And again, hopefully it works. That's the main thing. Everybody wants it to work and get the playoffs. You got to win football games, and that's the thing. It's great to be excited about the Kubiak offense. It's great to be excited. I think it's going to play great for Derek Carr. But when the bottom line is you have to put up wins, you have to get into the playoffs. You probably should win the division, but that's the main thing. That's what's going to be the tell all for everything is, were these the right moves when you're either sitting on the couch when the playoffs are here again for the 4th straight year, or are you in the postseason for the first time in 3 years? I think it's a big one.
Yeah,
David said something. You got to post your first episode as a throwback. I didn't know if I could find mine. I don't know if I could find mine. Mine was the Big Easy Blitz. That was mine when I used to do it with Barry Herstius. Rest in peace, Barry.
Rest in peace, Barry. Man. Talk about a dude that helped. Oh my goodness. I could ask that dude anything, anytime, and he was always so helpful. My first one was the All Saints Considered podcast. I used to do it like Tyler McClatchy, and I think it was before Alex Solis jumped on, Vern. Like we used to do all those. I'll see if I can find it. My first solo show, I'm never posting that. That's embarrassing. No one's ever hearing that again. That is never hitting. Never. The stuff I said about What Marcus Davenport can be, never seen the light of day.
I
Never
remember
seen the light of day.
I think when Barry and I were doing our show, I think it was 2015, maybe it was 2014, and podcasting wasn't as big as what it was. And then we did it all wrong. Like I did a whole hour of podcasting. Like back then when it should have been like 15, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I did a
Yeah,
whole
yeah, it's a different
hour and
time.
like a tiny little break. And so we did it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Question here. I think this is a relevant topic. I can say the glaring answer in the room. Thank you for the comment about the show. We really do appreciate the support. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Big things are coming here, guys, and we just love doing this thing. Any thoughts on the possibility of the Saints trading for Trey Hendrickson? I'll tell you that their coach said he is going to be playing for the Bengals this year for sure.
Yeah, he ain't
I
going
don't
anywhere.
think it's going to happen. He's just not. I know it. That would be able to right a wrong for sure in a way, but it's just not going to happen. They can't pay him. I don't think they would want to pay him really too, and stuff.
They already
So
didn't want to
just
pay him.
yeah, I chose Marcus Davenport over that one, and that wasn't good. Yeah, and it was a huge mistake to let him walk, just like when Sean let all the veterans walk. When they lost to Malcolm Jenkins and the Will Smiths and the Jonathan Vilma, it crippled their team. Like it felt like it was going to be okay, but it didn't, and so that was unfortunate. But all in all, as we get past these draft picks, solid draft. I think again, I don't want to totally grade it. I do want some time to think about it, but I think on the surface, there are some things to be excited about here. I think there is a lot of promise. I think there are some players the Saints got that if they're X, then holy crap. I think that's really the thing. If McKinstry's foot is okay and he's the type of player that we think he can be, then holy crap. If Rattler can develop and hang on for a couple of years and maybe beat out Jake Hayner, holy crap. I mean, that could be something. And I think that with Ford and such, but what do you think?
I think that there's a lot of if, but I think that this is a draft class that's designed to be if, right? Because the idea behind this draft class is get two solid players that can potentially immediately contribute to you or that could contribute to you sooner rather than later. And then go and grab guys that can develop and maybe turn out to be immediate impact players. They might not be immediate impact players in terms of like doing game winning things and stuff like that, but it's still things that ensure that the game is played, especially with the new kickoff rules and stuff like that. Like you have to have your special teams core ready to go. That was another place where I thought that Jalen Ford was great. I asked him a little bit about how, the upcoming change to the NFL kickoff rule impacts the game. And one of the things he said was that it highlights players like linebackers and tight ends that are big enough to get downfield, fight through blocks, and make tackles. And I thought that was a really good way to look at it. So I think that I'm not afraid to give it a grade. I think that not that you are, but I'm just saying like I'm not afraid to give it a grade right now because I would probably go with a B to start with the opportunity. I don't do plus minus grades and everything like that. Even when I was a teacher, even when I was a professor, like I
Man.
never used plus minus grades. You just got an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. Get out of my classroom. And so I was all about that. So yeah, I'll do a B for. I think it's above average because I think you found two players that could be immediate starters for you
Yep.
if you have the spots available for them, right? And I think you got a lot of really good developmental picks. I think that the big thing out of this is that you have to look at the fact that the draft is about more than just 2024. And I thought the Saints did a really good job at that. I love the fact they didn't give up future capital. I love the way that they utilized their capital as well, because we saw them packaging 2 picks to try to move up from the 5th to the 4th. They didn't do that, but they took 2 picks that they could have used to do that and allowed them to be able to get up in the second round to go and get the guy that they wanted. So I'm all about that. The thing that holds it back from an A for me right now, and maybe this is unfair because you're supposed to grade a draft class on what the team did, not what they didn't do. But I think that there's a lot of talent that they passed on at certain points to grab development when they could have had somebody that might have been a little bit more immediately impactful. And in the fact that they didn't address, at least to the naked eye at this point, the interior offensive line. I'm sure we'll find out that there's a reason for that and everything, whether that be somebody that they ended up getting through through somebody through free agency or whatever it might be, and all that. So I'll give it a B. I'm not as high on it as PFF is with the A+ thing. I appreciate the Saints taking a swing at quarterback. I appreciate them, addressing positions where they needed bodies, everything like that. But I do think that they might have been able to find more impact in other players at certain positions. And maybe that's unfair because you're not supposed to grade based on that. But I do think that that's the one that's kind of holding me back from moving that up to an A right now.
No, and I think it's a fair argument. I really do. I mean, yeah, you don't want to have 1,000 projects because, I mean, you look at last year's draft, case in point, Isaiah Foskey didn't come along the way they thought they did. Nick Saldiveri, he had this shoulder injury, but he didn't really come along the way they thought he did. I mean, Jordan Howden was great, and for most part, and I'd say A.T. Perry was a good one. And you know what you got with Brian Brzee, and then Kendre. Unfortunately, the injuries were what held him back, but I think Kendre's prime for a really, really big year. And the fact is, I think it's to the point where if he's not taking the majority of the snaps at the end of the year, I think there's a problem, right? I think that that's the type of vision they have for Kendre. And again, it's no knock on AK. It's no knock on Jamal. I think they can
life
be,
cycle, man.
they benefit amazing things from the system, but the reality is it's not like the old days. You don't have your Barry Sanders that play forever. You don't have your Emmitt Smiths that play forever. I remember saying that a long time ago is you just don't have that one man that just is the workhorse anymore. It just doesn't happen. You got a running back by committee. And unfortunately, once you hit that 28, 29-year-old mark, you're kind of used damaged goods. You just don't do as much in the NFL. It's not saying you can't, but that's just kind of how it goes across the league. So
yeah. And it's not like the NFL is known for its patience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're trying to add an 18th game right now. I mean,
right.
we slow down. We just added 17. Now you want to add 18?
Yeah, I think there's literally there's really like a stipulation in the CPA right now that says that they can't add an 18th game until 2030. Or my bad, CPA.
I know,
in the
CBA.
CBA,
I just had to.
in the CPA, it says that you can't even add one until 2030, and it don't matter.
Yeah,
like they'll figure out a way to make the concession, everything like that. But I think that like patience is such a big one. And that's one of the reasons why I like the quarterback situation. Like you're trying to make sure that you take swings there, because I mean, if you get somebody and you strike gold and you hit on what you need to hit on, like no team is going to have the patience to wait if the starting quarterback's not working out. And so you got to have players that are ready to go. And so that's one of the reasons why I like doing that.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying is like, yeah, but it's not, it's in the CBA, and I can't remember the movie, but it's like, yeah, but that's just paperwork. I can't remember what movie it was. I'm really thinking about it now. It's going to bug me that I can't think about it, but yeah, that was one of the things. Here's a question. I want to get to some of these too, because we can ramble on and on and on and on and on. Who is available as another edge rusher? I know Chase Young will be great, which obviously Chase Young's not in the equation yet. Another thing we forgot to ask.
I know.
Ross is about Chase Young. I think minicamp is just kind of like,
that's probably the better time for that question anyway.
Yeah. What I'll say is Chase Young was at the draft. I know that he was there. He was actually did an interview. He was helping promote something. I can't
That's
recall,
right.
But
yeah.
I mean, that's a good sign. He's out and about. He was doing things. He was at like a Pels game recently and stuff like that. And so it's not looking too good for the Pels. So that was pretty bad. But at any rate, do you like anybody that's available as an edge rusher? I mean, we've talked about it. They are stacked at that position right now, but also they have some question marks. Is there somebody you say, oh man, if they got this guy, then maybe they would be over the top?
Yeah, my big one, I'm just looking at a list here to make sure I'm saying people that are current and that I didn't miss anything. But my big one is Emmanuel Agba, honestly. Like that's the one that I think you could potentially bring in on a 1-year deal and get something from pretty immediately. It's the guy that was a 2nd round pick at one point. Now he's played on a couple of different teams and all that, most recently with the Miami Dolphins. But I mean, for a guy that comes in at was 6'4", 270, 260 or so, like he fits the prototype and everything, and he's been able to produce. And so I just feel like he's just one of those dudes that can do it. He's played it left in, right in. He's played in the interior and everything like that. Like there's just a lot of stuff that he's able to do. He had 5.5 sacks last year with Miami, mostly playing on the interior. 42 and a half sacks throughout his career so far. I think he would be one of those guys you could definitely bring in on a 1 year deal and then just get him in the mix. And I also would be surprised to see them bring back like Kyle Phillips or something like that too, to get another rotational, option in there, or another rotational audition in there. Like, I could absolutely see that.
Yeah, and I guess my only thing to caution is like I like Agba, but they've tried this over the years. I remember when they had Ziggy Ansah in here at one point. They had
Jadeveon
Taco
Clowney,
Charlton. I
Taco,
mean, all
yeah.
those. I mean, it just didn't really work out in the way that they thought. And again, I think that this hinges on how much they believe in Peyton Turner. Are they going to move anybody inside? Can they get
Yeah.
more Peyton Turner? Can Isaiah Foskey cut it loose? What is Cam's role going to look like now? I know it's not going to be 60, 70% of the snaps. What does that rotation look like? I think there's questions being answered. And so I think that's something more to pay attention to. But again, if they add another one, I'd be surprised. Never say never, but I just don't know. And Agba is a great choice. So. David asks, no, it's not Saints, but do you still follow Sean Payton? Yes, I do.
Yeah,
of course,
for sure.
Because Sean on social media is funny actually a lot of times. And then what do you think he can do with Bo Nix? I mean, any thoughts? I mean, I think here's what I'd say. Out of the stuff that's happened in New Orleans, none of the quarterbacks panned out. For a guy, and this is not a shot at Sean at any means, but for somebody who was good with the quarterbacks, you just didn't get it from Garrett Grayson. You didn't get it from Rashawn Canfield. You didn't get it from anybody that they brought in. Now you had Drew Brees, so the point that you didn't need anybody to do jack for you, right? You had Drew. And I think that was the thing. And even if you didn't have Drew, you had backups. Like I remember that game where Luke McCown started. You had Teddy Bridgewater in the game in the building and such. So it wasn't like there was this massive pressure for Sean to draft somebody. And of course, the whole thing about Mahomes lingering, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Bo Nix, a lot of people. I don't know if Blake Ruffino of Are You Serious Sports is on this still, but the whole, and LSU fans will know, the whole Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels debacle talk, if you know about that, where we're talking about that comparison. But any thoughts on what Bo Nix is going to be able to do with Sean Payton at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, look, Bo Nix is a guy that can run a system, so it's all going to be about the system that's around him. Sean was able to win with veteran guys. He was able to win with Teddy Bridgewater. Obviously, was able to win with Drew Brees, but who, aside from the Chargers, who couldn't. And then, you look at, what I think like the best quarterback that Sean Payton never really developed, that didn't show up with a big head start was Taysom Hill. And so can Bo Nix execute an offense in the way that the Saints were able to win with Taysom Hill, not playing the typical Taysom Hill role, but playing quarterback, right? When he really had to be under center for New Orleans, everything. And then, Sean won with Jameis too. So I'm inclined to believe that there is to vote for Sean, you know what I mean? And his ability to be able to scheme up for a thing. But really what it's going to come down to is, can Bo Nix run the system? And the thing that I like that Sean did too was that he used this draft to build the defense. He used this draft to add weapons around the quarterback. Didn't have to move for the quarterback, like I almost said stuck in picked at 12. It's supposed to rhyme, isn't it? And everything like that. And so I think it could be, I think it could work, but I think what I also am aware of, quarterbacks at the top of drafts haven't panned out in a while, man, with the exception of CJ Stroud. We think Trevor Lawrence is panning out, but you look at that 2021 draft class, 2022 draft class wasn't much better, but we didn't expect it to be much better. And everything. And so that's my one caution with all of it is there's a lot of those quarterbacks going up at the top of the draft ain't been panning out here recently. And so, can he run the system? That's going to be my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think I liked Anthony Richardson, what he was kind of doing before he got hurt too.
True.
I think that was a guy that I really liked. But
you're right.
I was laughing or smirking in the middle of it because you were talking about Sean winning with Jameis, and all I could think of is the road game against the Patriots where he threw up that
Oh yeah, that
prayer
was God.
to Marquez, and Sean was so mad about that play, even though it
Yeah.
worked out. But like, it was just the most funny thing. There's plenty of Sean stories to be had, but I was just thinking about that. But I think the draft class for the quarterbacks, it's such a high pressure, and like a Bryce Young. I'm not saying I didn't understand the fit. I just don't think they put Bryce Young in a position to succeed from day one. I just
Yeah, and
don't think
Bryce
so.
and Bryce is just an outlier too, man. Like to be that small playing quarterback and everything like that. And I get it, like everybody can name the 3 quarterbacks that panned out at that size and everything like that, but there's a reason why you can name them.
Dylon.
Yeah, right, there's a reason why you can name them because there ain't that many, And so,
Right.
so like that was my holdup with it. Like I'll be honest, like that's always been my holdup with Jake Haener here in New Orleans too. Is like, man, sub 6 foot quarterbacks don't work. They don't pan out consistently enough in the NFL. It's not something you can bet on, everything like that. And so I get worried about Bryce Young for that capacity too. Like you can put all the weapons you want to around him, but it's just that mold just doesn't work in the NFL consistently enough for you to be able to bank on. Like you're hoping for that to work.
Right. Good question from Ross. Is this your doppelganger? Are you
Hey,
Ross Del Rio by any
that's my
chance?
burner.
But a very good question. What are the next steps leading into OTAs and such? What's the team allowed to do with players? CBA rules? Can you explain that? So phase 2 starts Monday, and so
Mhm.
it's going to be a 3 weeks program. They are allowed to have on-field workouts, which you can do like individual or group type of drills, but there's no live contact. There's no like offense versus defense type stuff.
Mhm.
They're going to have a lot of classroom stuff is what they're going to be able to do. That's kind of like the basics of it. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
more football, but not much football, right? And you're really not going to get much until you get into training camp. Like mini camp or mandatory mini camp in June is probably the most we'll see, and from an action perspective when we get there. But you're not seeing too much. It's just kind of like, hey, do this, do that, and we'll simulate stuff.
Yep. And a thing to keep in mind too, just because the stories are going to come out. So let me just get ahead of it right now. Phase 2 is voluntary. You can
Yeah.
be there. You cannot be there.
Okay. DA
Veterans.
talked about that last night. He said
Yep.
that some people were there for good, not there for good reasons, but it's not 100%, but it's getting closer and such.
Yeah.
So
And so just remember that it's voluntary. And so when Marshawn's not around for something, it doesn't mean that they already traded him. It just they just haven't told you yet. Doesn't mean any of that kind of stuff. If Chris Olave's not around and it's not a contract dispute, okay, it's voluntary. And when you're a star player and your roster spot's cemented and everything like that, like you can learn the playbook in the classroom. You can learn the playbook at home. You learn the playbook on the Surface tablets, like or in meetings via electronic joining and all these virtual meetings and all these other things. Like I just want to be really really like cautious about all that. Like there's going to be a lot of names that you're going to hear. Oh, this person wasn't at X, and I mean this across the NFL. It already started with Justin Jefferson. Everything like that. It's voluntary. And voluntary means you ain't got to be there, and so that means for a lot of people, they ain't gonna be there. They ain't gonna be
yeah,
there, and that's okay. Like it's not a thing to be concerned about until we get to training camp.
yeah, for
And then,
sure.
yeah, and
And
even then, you're gonna see more hold-ins than you see holdouts because the new CBA. So
yeah, this is the new NFL, or not the new NFL. And look, I get it from a player perspective. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And so yeah, it is what it is, and this is just kind of how it goes.
mhm.
Real quick question here, and we're gonna get into this UDFA stuff. Tyler asked any rumblings about players Saints wanted to try to get but couldn't. Not too much. I mean, the only thing I just say is yesterday. I mean, I told you McKinstry was number 2 on their board. Number 1 was Johnny Newton, and so if they, were in a position to do that, but they didn't get all up to get him. But that would be the only real big one I'd say. But you're always going to hear stuff about this team or that team and all that good stuff. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that
And
makes
just
sense too, because even Da said if you listen to his presser from last night, he said, yeah, the Kool-Aid was kind of somebody we started looking at maybe trading up to. I think he said around like 36 or so, which was like right after Johnny Newton went off the board. And so it was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, cool.
Yep. Here's another one, and Alante or Kool-Aid in the slot, which maybe it's
I,
neither.
Yeah, it might be neither. They got some UDFA guys that have slot experience coming in. But what I'll say right now is that Alontae Taylor has experience in the slot now because he played there last year. Kool-Aid McKinstry over his entire career at Alabama, played 28 snaps in the slot, 28, 2-8, which is actually less than Alontae played when he was at Tennessee. Alontae, I think, played like 40 something snaps in the slot. And so I think you're still going to see Alontae there. I think the process for Kool-Aid is going to be about letting him acclimate and figure out he's gonna play both outside and inside to start. I imagine it's typically what they'll do is they'll cross train these guys, and then they'll see where he competes. But as of right now, I would say the incumbent with
Yeah.
slot experience is probably going to be the one, especially slot experience at the NFL level. The good news though is that both Alontae and Kool-Aid are fantastic tacklers for their position, and you have to be able to do that in the slot, and they both check those boxes.
Yeah. Some more questions here. Just guys, this is one. Just is Mekhi Becton a need now, even since they kind of addressed some things? And then, guys, if you haven't seen our shows, you know how we feel about Justin Simmons. I think that would be
Listen,
something that would make a lot of sense. I think that there's too many factors that would spell why that would make sense. I just don't
mhm.
know if he's at a point where he's like, I'll just take less money to go play on a team where I could maybe help them get into it, or he wants some money. I think that's the only thing that
Yeah.
needs to be answered for that. But does this team need a Mekhi Becton now?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, no, no, I guess not. Because even behind, like, because we're talking about Mekhi Becton, you would typically be a right tackle and everything, and so now you've got Taliese Fuanga, who's probably going to be your starter at right tackle. We'll see what happens with Ryan Ramczyk. I guess you have Landon Young behind. So I guess if you just want to build
Mhm.
out the depth, yes, but then it depends upon the money that he's asked for, because he's probably going to be looking for starter money and a starter opportunity. And so even if the Saints were interested in him, would he be interested in the situation here? I don't think so. And so I think it would be a little bit tough. I think it'd be tough to land him and convince him that there's a spot for him. Uh, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing because I think that the Saints addressed that in terms of what they needed at that specific position where Mekhi Becton would help you out in this year's draft.
For sure. Shout out to Chiefs Kingdom for tuning in. That's cool. I like
Cool.
it.
Thank you for
Can't
being here.
hey, thanks for beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl, so we didn't have to live through that. This is a question from Brett. Hey Ross, do you think the Saints will ever change the Saints prototype edge wise to a speed edge? Golly, we've been talking about that. You've
Yeah.
asked this question a lot to
I think it's the
people.
least I think it's DA's least favorite consistent question of mine. It's what I'm always asking about prototypes on the speed rushers and everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, DA,
Yes.
but I have to keep asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't think that they're ever gonna change. I think in order for them to change the prototype, the regime has to change, right? Like
Mhm.
every regime has their prototypes, and the Saints overall regime has not changed. And so that will maintain the prototype. But I will say this, and Dennis Allen even has gone so far as to say this, is that while they won't change the prototype because they believe that the prototype works, and it does, right? Like they get their starters, Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan and all this other stuff. Like it technically works. But I do, he has been very clear that they don't, that they see what happened with Caden Ellis. They see what happened with Zach Bond and acknowledge that adding that in addition to their prototype makes a lot of sense. And so going to free agency, and in fact, I would even say, who was it? Was it Nathan Latu that they just brought in
Mhm. Yep.
from Oklahoma State, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly, as one of the
Yeah.
UDFAs?
Mhm.
6'4", 250. has that edge rusher presence, but a linebacker build, a little bit more outside linebacker than hand in the dirt defensive end, all these other things. Um, they're going to keep swinging at that prototype. And I would even say that Chase Young is closer to that prototype than he is to the big body prototype, because you're talking about Chase Young, who's more of a speed rusher than he is. Like, he's not a bull rush guy and
Right.
everything. And so, like, I would even say that Chase Young's probably that dude. So you're already seeing them add to the prototype, but I don't think that you're going to see the prototype fully change. Like, next year, if they go into the first round and decide that they want to go out there and grab an edge rusher in the first round, they're probably drafting their prototype. But when it comes to free agency, day 3, undrafted free agency, that's where you'll see the tweaks.
For sure. Some more free agent questions, just because we've talked about these for sure. Do we take a flyer on Hunter Renfrow? I'm going to phrase this a different way. Dalton Reisner, we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Simmons. If you had to choose one, if you just had to choose one of those guys, because I think Renfro's a guy that it makes sense. I might could give you two, but if you could choose one out of that, who would you take? I know it's not Renfrow.
No, it's not. It's not at all. And that's no shade, but it's just, I mean, the other options are just better options. So let me ask you this: am I picking one of the three based on what I would want to see, like what I would do if I were the general manager, or am I picking one of the three knowing what I believe the New Orleans Saints would rather?
No, because I think the thing that matters is what the Saints envision for the player.
Right. Okay,
so
cool.
that
Yeah.
I think is more along the lines of what I would base it off of.
So out of those three, I would say Justin Simmons. I'm really close to saying Dalton Reisner, but I'm leaning on your secondary focused, like your defensive back focused head coach, your defensive back focused defensive coordinator, and of course your defensive backs coach in Marcus Robertson, who is a safety by trade.
Yep.
And so that's why I would put them there. I was close to saying Dalton Reisner, because build in the trenches, win in the trenches, has experience with your offensive coordinator, all of this stuff. I think there's validity there, but just looking at the guys that are making a decision, like bringing in a Justin Simmons, it aligns with two of your four when it comes to the biggest minds on your coaching staff, your head coach and your three coordinators.
And here's what I like about it, because I agree it's Simmons, and here's why. Because you look at the slot situation, if you got Justin Simmons there playing free safety, you could put Tyron in the slot.
Good call.
You could put Tyron in the slot, and you could put Howden on the back end, or you could put Jonathan Abram. That's what I like the most. And I don't think the secondary is something that they can afford to fall off on. I think the left guard will be fine. I do think that offensive line is the most important thing, because it's the only way to this Clint Kubiak offense is going to work. But I think from a defensive perspective, it was funny because I actually remember, and another reason why I think Simmons is just the Saints and their turnovers. Yes, they improved the interception, but Joe Woods was talking about it before the draft. He said he actually went back and looked at the tape. He said we could have had as many as 32 picks last year. He said that's how we left so many opportunities on the table with it, and it was kind of telling. And so I think that you want to cause a lot of confusion defensively. And I mean, if you think about it, the quarterbacks they're going to be playing, I mean, you're going to need some defense there. I mean, you are going to play a Justin Herbert, a Patrick Mahomes. I guess you're playing Bo Nix. I don't know if that's the case.
It's either him or Zach Wilson.
Raiders, whoever the Raiders are going to have. And then you've got a bunch of different ones, that you're going to play out against. And so it is tough to say and all that good stuff, but I'd go Simmons. I would. I really would.
I gotta agree with that.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, we understand.
Hi, Greg.
It is midnight. It is late. And for the people who are on the stream, and it seems like we're only getting more thanks. I mean, don't forget to like and subscribe, but this is cool. This is awesome. This is what we love to do. Ross, let's look at the undrafted rookies, because we keep, I keep looking at all the questions, which I love the questions. I think it's a really good one to have. Let me see if I can pull this thing up, because technology. pull up this. All right, let's bring you
Nice.
on. All right. So this is what you're looking at for your confirmed undrafted rookies that have been signed. Kyle Hergel, Boston College, Matt Hayball, punter from Vanderbilt. Hey, you guys have been talking about Lou Hedley, and his is an Aussie punter. Not that I'm jumping the gun, but we have a punter competition again, just like we have a kicker competition. Dallin
Mhm.
Holker, who, yeah, I think he's going to be a stud, potential to be a stud. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there you go.
Jermaine Jackson from Idaho, Nori Nuili, and probably may say that wrong, from Nebraska, Mason Tipton from Yale, Nathan Latu, you brought him up earlier, from Oklahoma
Mhm.
State, Kyle Sheets from Slippery Rock. I'm not going to pretend to know where
Let's go
that's at. I think
PA.
Nick said, yeah, PAs.
Yeah.
Millard Bradford from TCU, Sincere Hainsworth from Tulane, got a local guy, Kyler Baugh from Minnesota, Lawrence Johnson from Southeastern Missouri, Jacob Caboti from UL Lafayette, another local guy, Rico Payton, who they had on a top 30 visit. I remember reporting
Mhm.
that, from Pittsburgh State in Kansas, not Pittsburgh,
Right.
Pennsylvania, and then Isaiah Stalbird from South Dakota State. Oh my, those small schools.
Mhm.
What where do you want to start with this? And where do you think we're looking at as far as maybe some that you like right now?
Yeah, I figure let's start with the guys. Let's start with guys that we think could really make the roster, and let's just get to it. Right, Colorado State tight end, Dallin Holker. The guy is 6'3", 230 some odd pounds, so a little bit undersized for your typical tight end, but he's a move tight end. You'll hear phrases like F move tight ends, which means typically when you talk about the F, you're talking about a player that can line up in the slot, and he could also be a bit. And then when you talk about move, somebody could play in line, that can go out to that spot, and that could also play out of the backfield as well. And so it's really cool because he would play an entirely different position and have an entirely different. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Um, this is exactly what I was about to say. However, Holker and Jawan Johnson are not in the same conversation at all. Like
Mm.
they play the same position, by designation, but they would have entirely different responsibilities. Like Holker, I see having a path to the roster because of the fact that nobody else on the roster does what he does outside of Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill's going into mid 30s and stuff like that. And so you want to have these guys that maybe, like, if this is a role you want to keep alive in your offense, go out there and get guys that might be able to keep alive in your offense. And it feels like Holker is one of the guys that could potentially do that.
So my only question, or what I would say, is, so if the guy, and this is why I'm asking, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but if
No,
he was
no.
so good, why wasn't he drafted? What was it that maybe held him back? Was it the fact he played at Colorado State? Was it
I
just
have an answer
something
for you.
about fit? Ah, there you go. That's why I
I
asked the question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I wouldn't have thought about this otherwise, but remember what I was just talking about, right? I was about, like, you were going to want somebody that can kind of play all these different roles in a way that, a la a Taysom Hill. There's only one of those dudes in the NFL, and there's Holker's fit, right? Like, no other team in the
Mhm.
NFL has that game plan ready to be able to use the guy that can move into and out of all those different spots. So that's probably why he didn't get drafted, because the Saints simply didn't draft him, right? There was one team where he had a perfect fit, and maybe, just maybe, that perfect fit is here in New Orleans.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you were looking at it, I mean, what stands out to me is the fact they're bringing another putter. It's another Aussie style punter, and a guy that could give Lou Hedley a run. I think he might have some more upside for sure. And I know that doesn't get people excited, but everybody complained about the punting last year, even though we tried to kind of tell you what was going on and the thought process. But I think that's just something to keep an eye out on. I think there's some of these guys that you're going to need to look at more, because I don't think many people have actually watched film on Rico Payton or Isaiah Stalbird, these guys from these
Mhm.
small schools. If you have, man, props to you. Or if you watch Yale football, I mean, great. But I think Jermaine Jackson was one. I think where this comes in, what makes it interesting, not that Jermaine Jackson, Ross,
I know, it's
but
just such a great name, man. No
it is.
relation, by the way.
Right, right. But I think where it does come in is, the Saints always try to find that guy, a good returner. You joked about this, that guy that was like a Rashid Shaheed or like a Deontay Hardy or the Malik Flowers
Yeah,
last year from Montana State, and they've got a guy like that. But the new kickoff rules, you're going to probably have two returners, and so
great point.
some of these guys could sneak on as a second returner slash whatever you are in the offense too.
That's where the Bud Means has yet another path to the roster as a drafted player. Obviously, Jermaine Jackson to be able to do all that too. Jermaine Jackson's got 4 career returns for touchdowns. One, I believe it's 1 kick return and 3 punt returns. Average like 30.1 kick return yards over the course of his career. 16.4 punt return yards, which is really good. The punter one I want to talk about real quick is he was the SEC punter of the year, and he is also the all-time leader at Vandy for average punt return yards. So even though he's an Aussie style punter, he gets air. Like he gets yardage. 46.5% where it was his average per punt according to ESPN. Lou Headley's according to ESPN was just 43. And in the net, 43.7 for Hayball, and then 39.7 for Lou Headley. So you're getting a little bit more with Hayball. It's not, 10 yards. It's not, but 5 yards makes a difference and all that. And so that's the one that I think like that's what you're looking at when you're looking at what a Hayball is in terms of that competition. I think you're looking at a bigger leg.
Yeah. I like this question because why don't you bring in a real punter like what you had in Blake Gillikin? I'm gonna butcher this, but I remember Darren Rizzi talking about this Australian style rules and the way
Mm-hmm.
the rugby kicks. It's the way the ball bounces, and it makes it harder for returners to field the punt too. That is part of like the
Yep.
style of way they kick. And again, the way it just throws the receivers or like the returners off balance in a way. And so I think that's the short answer of why they like that style. And if proof is in, their coverage stats and all that other stuff. But I think if you got the Aussie punter that could boot it a little bit more, because again, it's an unorthodox style. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like crap. Usually it's not like this one where you have a high hang time, that you're expecting, for to hang up and hit the rafters of the Superdome. It looks totally different. But
Mm-hmm.
again, you look at that, you could, and again, the thought process is if you punt it 60 yards and you give up 10 on the return
Yep.
versus you punting it 50 yards and no return, it's still the same net. Now, unfortunately, Lou Headley's never going to punt it 60 yards to begin with. He's never going to probably get 50 yards much, more or less. But I think a guy like Haydall could give him a
Mm-hmm.
more yardage and give him a couple of extra yards. So I think that's one of the things that I look at personally.
Yep. That's exactly it. No notes.
And then our friend John had reported that Headley's hang time was 4.04 seconds and Wable was 3.88. Do you think that matters because he was SEC punter of the year?
Not so much. I think that this is also like the big thing about getting your gunners and getting more competition there is that you can build speed there. And so, the difference of 0.2 of a second, I think that they'll be okay when it comes to that. Um, and then I also think too that a big part of it is you got to remember that sometimes punting isn't just about how big the leg is, how much the hang time is, but what about location? Like which one can locate the ball better? Headley had, I think it was like tied for the 5th most punts in a season inside the 20 in franchise history, or something like that in his first year. So like that's something that Rizzy loves too. And so can you aim? Can you hit? Are you accurate with where you're kicking? All those other things. I think all those things come in a little bit more probably than hang time. Hang time's sexy, don't get me wrong. It's fun to watch. It's fun to see during camp and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think there's going to be directionality. There's going to be your ability to be able to locate, and it's going to be can you keep the returner from being able to return, and that's going to be a thing. And certainly, like hang time can help you with that because then your coverage can't get down there. But there's other ways to still be able to hold that off, as we saw with Headley.
Yeah. Yep. Another question here, going back to means. Do you think Kubiak saw him in the Saints' new offensive scheme, I mean, it's possible. I would just say this: the Saints brought in Randy Mueller, to help out with this
Mhm.
process. They also brought up the other guy. I
Dave
can't
Ziegler.
remember
Dave
from
Ziegler.
Dave Ziegler. That's the other one that to help with this process. And so they did get input from the offensive staff. They got their insight, and so did it influence the pick? I don't know that that's the case, but I think they have a vision for the player. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so who's to say? But they wanted a guy that could help get contested catches. And you look at the roster. I mean, aside A.T. Perry, are you really saying maybe Equinemius St. Brown can make you a couple of contested catches? Can he? Is a Cedric Wilson able to do that? I mean, I think that they took a guy like that to see. And so, I mean, you're talking about a 5th round guy too. And so if it doesn't pan out, are you mad about that? If like Equinemius is better at it, or if AT jumps up a lot in second year and is your contested catch guy, I don't know. I don't think so, but
Yeah. And
that's obviously looking at it from a different
yep.
perspective, probably.
Yep. And I talk about this all the time on Locked On Saints is that like contested catches, like every jump ball is like every 50-50 ball is a contested catch, but every contested catch isn't a 50-50 ball. In some
Right.
cases, like those contested catches is can you make a tough catch over the middle? Can you make a tough catch working your way back to the quarterback while there's a linebacker that's crashing down on you in the middle of the field, or coming back towards the quarterback while a DB is trying to get their hand in there to mess you up at the catch point or whatever. Like a lot of it, or just like something over on the sideline, whatever. Like a lot of contested catches are really based on just simply being contested, not necessarily 50-50 stop, jump, and try to high point the football. Those are great. Like you got to be able to do that. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's one of the other things that is one of those pieces about like what Maines brings, is that like he can do those other things where he's making those physical catches over the middle. I think that's why Bob's line that he drew to Traquan in terms of being able to make tough catches over the middle of the field, but hopefully more productive than what Traquan turned out to be, helps that he wasn't, that Means isn't as high a draft pick as Traquan was. But like I think that's the other kind of nuance to the contested catch conversation, is that it's not just jump balls, it's not just 50-50 balls. You got to be able to go up there and, make some of those tough catches in the middle of traffic too.
For sure. And I mean, it remains to be seen. And so I feel good about it. I want to see it. I mean, it just makes me excited to see football. And Ross, I'm glad you mentioned Locked On, because we've been going at it for a while. So I want to start winding down, because you said you're going to do a show after this. So I'm not trying to keep
baby,
you up
I'm
until
grinding,
super late.
baby.
Yeah, I know. This is the time, but obviously want to get be respectful too, and we all need sleep at some point. But just as we get close to the end, if you have any last questions, by all means ask them. But again, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and check out the channel for all the videos, any of the prospects that they've drafted, coach insight. Again, I'm going to keep saying this: Brian Baldinger insight was invaluable. What he said about Fuaga, what he said about the Saints, and it's so genuine. Like Baldy's a dude that, I mean, you can tell. We had this discussion in the media room. You can tell he actually watches people.
Yeah.
It's not like, and this is not a shot at other analysts, but some people just kind of like fake it in a little bit in a way, but Baldy like knows. I mean, you asked about some of the things about the interior. He's like, well, to be honest, I don't think I ever saw him on the interior, just kind of talking about that. But man, what a good get. And some of these guys that we were able to talk to over this last few days, and Jim Nagy too, Senior Bowl, getting some of his insight too. So for sure. But man, I can't believe this time's already passed. I can't believe the draft is done. We were working up all of this, and we thought it was going to be so much, but man, yeah, like I said, we're at the facility for like 27, 28 hours and stuff. And so I don't know. These are the 3 days in April we work. I guess the biggest thing, like the big 3 days. I say that
big 3 days.
We're always working. Yeah. And as far as the other undrafted free agents, what I'd say is a lot of these guys, I mean, I can't tell you that I've heard of all of them. I need to go watch some. I need to check some out. The other one, I'd say the one small school guy I knew was Rico Payton. You know what I'm saying? And so there's some to watch, and we'll probably come together and discuss a little bit more of them and such. But more moves are to be made. They're going to have rookie mini camp tryouts too. That'll be fun to watch. That'll be our actual first look at players on the field. So really excited on that. And so it'll be good times. But Ross, as always, as we wind down, let's go to Ross's corner. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to get off your chest, man?
Uh, No, I'm good, man. Like I don't have anything to get off my
All right,
chest.
end of the show.
I'm
Bye.
yeah, yeah. Bye. No. I just want to echo John, man. It's been so fun being able to do the show with him and being able to do the show with all y'all, and we really appreciate all the support that's going on all through it. And just looking forward to continuing to cover, continuing to dive into these new prospects, new Saints, all that, and the rest of the offseason as we continue to move forward. Because man, like here we are, we're through the draft now, which means training camps can be here before you know it. That means preseason can be here before you know it, which means regular season can be here before you know it. And so it's gonna be a lot of fun. So thanks for being along for the ride, and looking forward to much more.
Yeah, and look, we don't have any secret strategy. We're just kind of going on the fly. We say, hey, you want to do this week and do it on this day and all that. But maybe we'll get structured and maybe we'll get sponsored at some point too. Because I mean, there's so many things that are coming between training camp, football games, coverage, all that stuff. And so I mean, we don't have a certain vision here, but man, it's just fun to do this and talk. And I miss podcasting. I miss doing that. When I was doing my show with Terrence Copper, I just loved it. And is a miss, and it just made all the sense in the world to partner up with Ross. And so
Amen.
here we are. But man, wait, hold on, see, got to get Deuce. I don't know if you mean Deuce McAllister or Rev Deuce, but we can know Deuce, two Deuces. So
yeah, we get both.
I'm not sure.
Deuce,
Yeah,
Deuce.
we want to try. If you guys have suggestions and stuff, I mean, we might try to get some players on here. I think we want to try to get Cam. We can try to get maybe Jordan Howden, some of the guys. I don't know. We'll see. We can throw it out there and find out. But sky's the limit. We don't have any set agenda, set plans, or anything. We're just having some fun, and we really do. He said Rev Deuce.
Rev Deuce.
No Rev from long time. He's another one of those guys.
Rev's dope.
All right. Well, again, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you aren't able to tune in live, just remember we do have podcasts that gets uploaded too. So you can take us on the go. It's on Apple, it's Spotify. It's all linked on our YouTube channels, all into promotions, all that fun stuff. That's probably going to do it for us tonight, unless anything else comes magically in the next 5 seconds. But on behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendrix signing out for tonight. Thank you, Houdat Nation. You're fantastic. We love you guys. Thanks. Talk to you next time.